Hello everyone, this is David Arroyo, and today I would like to talk a little bit about thumbnailing for concept art, which is basically the very first step before you actually start making concept art paintings. Now this could be for anything. This could be for video game production, for film production, anything basically in the entertainment industry, or at least in this example, it's so. So basically what I did here is it's for a fictitious project. It's a project that doesn't really exist. And the reason why I'm doing this is because, see, I do this for different films already that I work on, but the thing with films is often that when you do create some work, it takes quite a while before you're allowed to show it. If ever, sometimes you're not even allowed to show it because maybe the film doesn't come to completion, or or they put it in the freezer for a bit so that the project can be revived a few years later. So in order to avoid that type of stuff, I thought, hey, how about I just make an example video of what I do when I work on these type of projects, and this part of it is more focused on concept art, because I've been showing a lot of stuff on this channel on storyboarding and comics, but very little on concept art, even though it's something that I also do. So here it is. This is basically what I do before I even start doing any concept paintings or anything whatsoever, where I really get the detail further. I start adding in colors and all that stuff. I always start with basically thumbnails, right? And this is one way of doing thumbnails. There's so many different ways. I have a second video which I will highlight a little bit later on thumbnails, and it's a very different process. But this is basically where I try to do thumbnails based on values, except for in this particular frame where you can see that it's more like a comic book feel. And that's the thing, because I also do comics, I tend to get a lot of influences from one style and the other, and then while you're doing your thumbnails, you're like, it ends up looking a lot like a comic book now. But you just paint over it, you fix it, and you make it look a bit more like traditional thumbnails and whatnot. But anyway, so the setting here was basically I was pretending that for example, the client wants something to do with they got this saloon in head, in mind. There's a script that's being written still, and maybe they just need some visuals to sell the idea to investors. This is a process that happens very often in film, especially indie films and stuff like that. So the director, producers and stuff, they need to get their hands on money to fund the film. And in order to do that, often they create a pitch book, and they send either the entire script or parts of the script. Most of the time it's the entire script to potential investors. And so these type of things happen. And for these things, some concept art is often needed. So I was pretending that, let's, for this project, pretend that we're in that phase. And I'm basically creating a whole bunch of thumbnails that I can then show to the director or the producer or whoever would be in charge, art director or anyone. And then they would basically say, okay, I want thumbnail number this and that. I want these ones to move forward, and we can create actual concept paintings from them. So that's basically what these thumbnails are for. I do have to admit, these thumbnails are a bit more detailed than what I normally do them, and that has to do with the fact that for this project, because it's a fictitious project, I kind of gave myself the luxury of time, which is not very often the case. Normally you don't really have that much time to do thumbnails, so some of these thumbnails, they are borderline on the edge of like becoming early paintings, but that's fine. I had the luxury of time, so I just wanted to use that anyways. The way I start my thumbnails, like I said, there are many ways of doing it. Right now, in this one, I mean, even some of them I could just hand them in just like what you just saw. But it's basically, sometimes I start with a line drawing, sometimes I start with just flat values, which is not as often. I think the line drawings comes from the whole comic book thing, because I always start with line drawings in comics, and it's just one of these habits of when I work in comics and stuff. Also, maybe interesting to know that on this particular file, I basically did everything on like well, every thumbnail has an individual layer but nothing else. So as you can see there, if I messed up, I had to re-raise the entire you know, area and make the dancers a bit smaller instead of just moving them on a separate layer. So you don't have to do it that way, obviously. I actually advise you not to, but you know, it's just, it doesn't bother me either ways. You know, it's fast anyways. It's the whole point of thumbnails, just being fast. So on these thumbnails, I gave myself anywhere between 15 minutes and 30 minutes, which, like I said, thumbnails normally within production environment, you should be within the 15, but here on some of them I went close to 30 minutes. So just giving myself the luxury of time. And then obviously, yeah, if you change your mind and stuff like that, so you know, that can add time as well. But again, the whole point here is just to find a feel for the project, a feel for the environment, and then based on that, you know, these images, they get greenlit or not. Some of them they go through, some of them not. For me as well, you know, for example, here I like thumbnail number 9, for example. I really like the lighting on that. You know, I think I might move forward on thumbnail number 7. I also like 8 very much, you know, so see, and that might be different. You know, you might look at this and be like, oh, I prefer thumbnail number 5 or 6 or 7, you know, all that stuff. So that's basically the whole point of thumbnails. And there you go. I mean, it goes quite fast. You can do this normally within production half a day, but like I said, I gave myself more time, so it took me more than, I think, close to six hours, something like that, to get these done. So there you have it. I hope you like these thumbnails. Like I said, there's many ways of doing it. There's also a very cool trick with a lasso tool, which I might do a video on another time. But here you have another way of doing fast thumbnails. If you like that, then you can check my other video on fast thumbnails. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for stopping by. If you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.